reflections kind of from that jumping off point are that people exist in environments. And that tells you something about the way you should approach the work. At least that's what we thought. We started to think about what does it feel like when you walk into the room, right? And we all know that, like in this room today, you walk into the room, you get a feel. Someone said kindergarten. Yeah, I picked that up. I like that. I get to play with this while I talk in this room, right? Which I'm going to do, see if it changes my behavior. You get a feel when you walk into a room. Everyone does. And so the rooms in Lawrence were really bad for people. We need to focus on ourselves as the cultivators of environments, not the builders of programs or organizations. Environments do one thing. They starve things and they feed things. That's what environments do. We need to create an environment that is feeding the stuff that it's starving and starving the stuff that it's feeding. Secondly, we needed an operational definition of community and community building, and using networks as kind of a bouncing off point, starting to understand community as functionality, not as relationships. The relationships are the kind of the framework for community. Community is really the functionality that comes from those relationships. Things like the ability to make collective decisions, to plan, to solve problems well, to get information, to get access to opportunity. Those are the things that community is, right? It's functionality. Now that's important when you start thinking about community building, because it tells you a little bit about what community building is and how to go about it. And so that helped us think about community building because it focused us on value. It focused us on where value comes from, and it gave us a little bit of an equation that goes something like this. Community is value. Value comes from connectivity. Connectivity comes from basic human positive interaction, which is fun, food, joy, dancing, stuff like that. Those are the paths through which connections happen. And so we get very focused on this idea of fun, joy, love, we said this morning, as being really fundamental. Simple, except that it's not happening enough. Simple, except that it's really hard to get this behavior into our institutions and onto our streets and so on. It's a simple thing, but it's hard and complicated to figure out how to do it given the environment that we're in. The fourth, the only way to cultivate an environment is from the inside out. So we began to think about leadership as really a function of inhabiting an environment, as opposed to being on the outside and making something for them, being on the inside and making something for us. And looking at sustainability as really the formation of habits and norms and cultures. All of this stuff flows from this idea of environments. And so the idea of leadership, like our idea of leadership, which is pretty well established right now, as being an inhabitant, being a weaver, comes from that perspective. So those 5 reflections, early reflections, led to some practice elements that were pretty important.